Okay, welcome back to the program. Clement Eze, the Director General at Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, joins me now for us to take a look at the cost of flooding in Nigeria. Welcome to you, DG, and thanks for joining us. Now, let me start by asking you this question. I know I saw a warning from your agency some time ago. Yes. The question right now is that what is the cost of this flooding now? Because a lot of people say, okay, because Cameroon opened these dams. Some people say, okay, the rains are too heavy, too much this season. So what exactly is the cost of this flood?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, if there is no rainfall, there will be no flooding. Now, what happened this year is that, even as predicted by NIMET, we experienced quite above normal rainfall in several cities in Nigeria. When it's above normal, it means there is an average that is expected. Maybe over the past, say, 10, 20, even 30 years. It's said that the one of this year will be above the average of all those years for majority of the cities in Nigeria. And that's what actually happened in the sense that this year, the rainfall we had this year has been quite enormous. Likewise, the flood. This has exceeded that of 2012. So what happened is that many locations in Nigeria experience heavy amount of rainfall over a short period of time. What we call high rainfall intensity and for a shorter duration. For instance, you have to pour a bucket of water in this place. Gradually, you drop it, maybe for about 2 hours. You may not see the effect. As you are dropping it, it is drying up gradually. But if you empty it, instead of about 2 hours, you empty it in a second. So what happens? There will be a deluge in this place. So in some locations in Nigeria, for instance, in Jigawa State, a place that is supposed to experience about, for maybe, say, 4 or 5 months of rainfall in the year, the rainfall that is expected to experience in a year of period of rainfall, you saw it in a few days or few hours. So heavy rainfall, shorter duration. If it has spread over the normal length of the rainy season in the year, you won't feel it. So that's what happened eventually. So much rainfall over a short period of time.
So much rainfall. What is the cause of this?
It's climate change.
Climate change.
Yes. For some locations, we tell you, for 54 years we've been here, we've never seen this kind of rain. Several locations in Nigeria, they've never seen it for 60 years. Those who are quite old will tell you what is happening now. We never experienced it before. But then, that is the precipitation, the rainfall. What happens on ground? The anthropogenic activities of man. What do we do with our environment? What are we doing in our environment? That helps to exacerbate the already bad situation. When you build and block drainages, or you don't even put drainages at all on our streets, or the buildings are blocked. Like there's a warning in FCT. We are going ahead with more demolitions. About 700 people houses have been, whether you call them houses or shanties, have been removed as we speak in the FCT. And they're saying we are still going ahead to do more.
Okay, the question is, because this is the worst flood ever.
Yes.
The last one that happened that was less than this was in 2012.
Yes.
I remember I and my colleagues then we were caught up in the middle of it in Kogi State, precisely Lokoja, when we were going for the governorship debate. I don't forget that experience in Kogi, in Ondo State at that time. I and Imonia Marire and a few of my colleagues were caught up. We were in Lokoja like 2 a.m. When we're coming back, the bus we were in was ferried on, and is it a canoe now? We call it. Both us and the canoe were on that water trying to get to the other side. So it was a horrible experience for us in 2012. I never forget that experience. Now the question is, 10 years later, we are now experiencing a flood that is worse than that. What is exactly wrong with us as a country? Because at that time we have had 10 years experience. Is it that we did not, why did we not fix the issues at that time? Because at that time too, we were told that Cameroon opened its dam. So what exactly is the problem?
Now, it is what we call in hydrology, a return interval. An event that takes place has taken place today, it may take another cycle of say 10 years or 20 years or so on and so forth. So we are beginning to believe that that kind of rainfall or the flooding issues have a maybe 10-year return interval. Then, proper to your question, you see, there is this lackadaisical attitude of Nigerians. At times we say, it won't happen. It won't happen. There are many things that could have been done piecemeal. Yes, people talk about dredge of rivers Niger and Benue, which is a very humongous project to dredge river Niger from the, say, what we call lower Niger, say from Baro down to Warri and so on beyond. It's a huge project. But there are so many things we could have done within our cities by the sub-nationals that after receiving the advisories, like those of us, the agencies that are forecasting, we only issue advisories. Like in advanced climbs, before you go out in the morning, you watch for the advisory given to you, and you heed. But here, nobody will listen to you, even when you release it. Apart from maybe those who fly, and because the airliners will understand the implication of flying. When NIMET or the weather forecasters have told you the atmosphere is not proper for you to fly, they won't fly. But apart from that, most of the advisory being given, people don't heed to it. Now, why, I think 2 days ago, or about 3 days ago, in one of the Niger Delta states, it is at this time that they are using an amphibious equipment to be excavating the drainages in October. We expect that after these warnings are given, you can clean your drainages, deseed small rivers within your own territories. You can just deepen their carrying capacities.
Now the question is, how do you give them the warnings? Do you just issue press release and hope that media stations will just take your press release, or put in? How do you have states? Do you have branches in other parts of the country? Do you engage with the state government, like write letters to the appropriate? Some of them have Ministry of Environment and all of that. Do you engage with them, or is just you just come, you put your press release and expect that everyone will see that?
Thank you so much. That question is quite germane. The issue is, this is a major activity of Nigeria and Local Service Agency. Issue of prediction of flood and the issues of early warnings. Likewise, NIMET does its own. Now, when we finish the scientific preparation for the flood outlook for the year, the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, for this year's own is the 7th one, the same minister has been doing public presentation, Engineer Suleiman Adam. Now, ahead of the public presentation, which is widely publicized, he personally authors letters to individual governors in Nigeria and tells them these are the locations in your state that our prediction has raised red flag on. These are possible things you can do now that we are not yet in the flooding era. So this is done. And the commissioners of environment, commissioners of agriculture in all the states, permanent secretaries, they are notified. State emergency management agencies, they are equally notified in writing with the same document per state. And these are properly delivered to the government houses in each of the states in Nigeria. But the fact that they don't believe it or they don't give it serious attention, but I'm believing that may be a paradigm shift from next year. See what the calamities we are seeing all over the country. According to NEMA, 603 people have died so far. Over 2 million people have been displaced, and so on and so forth. So we do the needful, and we follow it up with a sensitization program. Much as we have offices, not everywhere in Nigeria, but we go from one zone to the other. We bring them as a cluster and tell them this is what we have predicted as likely to happen. And it's always good to err on the side of caution. Do what we are asking you to do. Even if it doesn't come to pass, you are safe.
Okay. The question also again is, Cameroon issued a warning this time. What happened?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I know that because Cameroon issued a warning. The Lagdo Dam, they did.
Well, after the 2012 flood incident,
yes,
the two countries began to talk. And then after several diplomatic moves and so on, movement traveling from here to there, a memorandum of understanding was drafted.
Yes, between both countries after
countries.
2012.
His Excellency President Paul Biya was in Nigeria in 2016. I met with our President Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, and they endorsed an MOU. I have a copy of it. There are two structures in Cameroon that are quite vital or have resource implication on Nigeria. One is the Lake Nyos, which in 1986 August exploded, threw up poisonous gases into the atmosphere. Eventually, it flew or moved and entered what we call Kasenala River and killed several animals and human beings. Poisonous gases. Although Cameroon is degassing, it tries to reduce the gas so that it won't burst. So Nigeria had built Kashimbila Dam that in the event that Lake Nyos, natural lake, it breaks, Kashimbila Dam will catch it. Then Cameroonian Lake Dam, before you release water, notify Nigeria. In 2019, they released water, Nigeria wasn't notified. I was in Morovia, October, around 28, 29 October 2019. The flood level in Cameroon, in Yola, Adama was rising, Newman, and they had to call me from Yola office. I called Cameroon, they denied it, that they didn't open their dam. I kept pressing because it was rising up to Taraba, eventually coming down to Benue State, and then they owned up on the 1st of November 2019. We opened the gate, spillway, on the 10th of October and closed it on the 31st, making 21 days of spilling of water. So they didn't notify us. Now this year, when Nigeria was experiencing heavy rainfall, local rainfall, torrential rainfall within Nigeria, and many communities or states have been submerged due to what we call urban flooding. I kept calling that this is what's happening in Nigeria. Please notify us in the event you'll be opening your dam this year. They gave me the history that we opened last in 2019, which I'm aware. Then I kept following up. On the 14th of September, I called the same discussion. My friend there, a colleague, said, sorry, we opened the gate yesterday at 8:50 a.m. and we've been spilling water at the rate of 615 cubic meters per second. We opened our gate yesterday. So I just want to straighten it out that they didn't notify us formally. I kept pressing from time to time to know what is happening. So they opened their gate
so there was not an official notification?
There's not official.
It was
in fact,
just because of the relationship
yes, because of 2019, the other Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, had to write a letter, strong one, to the Minister of our Foreign Affairs Minister here, and then directly showing him what has happened, that please get in touch with their counterpart in Cameroon and to know why they didn't follow the spirit of the memorandum that have been signed. Well, you know what happened in diplomatic circles, so I don't understand what went for it. But for this particular one, which is the third, 2012, 19, and this one, 2022. Now,
the other issue is that Nigeria also has a responsibility, because it's not that anytime Cameroon opens a dam, we sneeze, we die. Because that's what's really happening. On our own part, they built a dam. What were we supposed to do? Because it's taken, this last 10 years ago, we were in this same situation. 2022 is worse. I don't hope that in 2032, we will still be here. God keeping us alive, we will say 10 years before it happened. Yes, because for me, it's really an embarrassing situation. Nigeria is even the biggest economy in Africa, the biggest country with the largest population. Cameroonians will say, you guys are not even serious, because you needed to even do your own part of it at that end, so that we don't experience any time that Cameroon opens the dam, Nigerians die.
But as I was coming here, somebody sent a clip of Lagdo Dam spilling water, and there was a voiceover. Somebody was talking at the background, and then I think it's a Nigerian also, but you didn't see the picture of the person. Giving the history of that Lagdo Dam, which I am quite confident with, that in 1977, when they began to build, the advanced Nigeria please build their own buffer dam within their own territory, and then the government at the time, we did a design of what we call Dasen Hausa Dam in a community or village called Dasen Hausa in Fufure, local government in Adamawa State. So it's supposed to be about 2.5 times the size of that Cameroonian Lagdo Dam, and we have so many components of it. Unfortunately for us, that time we may say the economy was quite buoyant and maybe they didn't see the necessity to build it. I mean, Nigerian government then. So, and I know what it could be quite exorbitant embarking on such a project now. But then it could have been something easy to be done. But in the interim, we keep talking about having small earth dams on the tributaries of the Benue, for instance. There are many rivers within Nigerian territory, downstream the Lagdo Dam, that are very prolific, that empty into River Benue main channel, that's helping to cause this flooding. We have Donga, we have Taraba, we have Gongola. These are rivers that Nigeria could put dams, small dams. So it will reduce what is entering to the existence. For instance, that of Kashimbila Dam in Taraba State, it controls almost 27% of what enters into River Benue channel. So that one goes a long way, apart from hydropower and whatever it's waiting to do if Cameroonian Lake Nile should break. So but for now, it's also helping to regulate what enters into River Benue. So we expect that something serious should be done. So much is being spent on rehabilitation, relief materials. You can't bring back even life. Like they say about over 600 people have died so far. So the earlier we take the bull by the horn to see what could be done. I listened to my honorable minister, I think sometime last week on Al Jazeera.
Yes, I saw
he
that.
He talked about revisiting the drawing, the ministry, to review the design that was done maybe over almost 40 years ago.
It's for me, even as a Nigerian, I'm so upset and embarrassed, and even it's shameful that we're talking about these things. It's as if you are talking to a child and the child is not listening, or the child is recalcitrant. That's how it's seeming like, or that's how it is actually. Now, how bad will this flood be? Have we really seen the worst? Or, because we're still in October, how bad will it still be, or will it get worse than this? And when are we expecting, perhaps, I'm even surprised, even in Abuja, the heavy rains in the past few weeks. You know, I'm surprised at that. But how worse can this be?
In 2012, the highest flood level, Lokoja is the epicenter. That's where we take the measurement. The highest flood level in 2012 occurred September 29th. The height was about 12.84 meters. The height measured from a zero gauge. Now this year, that's from 12.84. This year, 2012, it occurred on the 4th of October, and it was 13.22. Higher than
the water level.
Water level, flood.
From the ground.
Yes, there's a place we take measurement. We have equipment there. So 2012 was 12.84.
Okay.
And it occurred on September 29th. So this year, it occurred on October 4th, and that was 13.22.
Okay.
Higher than the 2012 flood incident.
13.22, is it meters?
Meters, yes, meters, yes, sorry, meters.
Yeah.
12.84 meters. Now, it has been receding. I think as of today, yesterday was about 12.21.
Okay, so
it is going down.
That's
it's
the
going
one
down
in Lokoja?
Yes, Lokoja.
Okay.
And then I spoke, I think around 8 p.m. last night, I was in touch with my friend in Cameroon. So, but I wanted to know, because when we spoke last, he said they might stop spilling water middle of October. So by 14, 15, I kept trying to reach out to him. We talked at length yesterday, both chat and the call. He said that they are spilling water now from 615 cubic meters per second. At the point, you got to about 1,000 cubic meters per second. But as at yesterday, he said it was 230.
Okay.
So it is coming down, and that they might stop around 29th of this month, Saturday. Of October. Stop spilling. Now, the issue is, this has a travel time. Like what we say that Lokoja has receded or is receding. When is receding? Where is it going to? It's going to Bayelsa finally. That's the last port of call. So we're expecting that, like I was a communication, a question that was posed to me from Bayelsa, to know when are we going to see the ground properly.
In Bayelsa, yes, I was coming to that too. Since
so
it's traveling to Bayelsa, so when will the water recede in Bayelsa?
So taking a cue from what happened in 2012, we're expecting that by the middle of next month completely,
it will
be quite
recede.
Yes.
And the water is going where? Underground? Or where is
It's
it?
finding its way to the ocean, but we
the
believe we
ocean?
feel because Bayelsa is almost below the sea. So it depends also what is happening outside Nigeria. The issue of melting of the iceberg, when they met it enter into the ocean, and the ocean, when it is swelling, maybe vessels moving, it will still try to push the water upland.
Okay, the question is, do you measure the volume of water in Bayelsa to, or the Lokoja own is just what you measure averagely? Once you measure the volume of water in Lokoja, that gives you an idea. Do you go to measure the
we
volume
have
of water
measuring
in
equipment
Bayelsa
also
now?
down that side, because in fact, in collaboration with the Shell, we wanted to assist to put some stations in that area because it affected them so much in 2012 and even this year. Someone was almost crying last night. So many oil wells have been overtaken.
Yeah.
So we couldn't enter those areas because of the problem of security. That we spent some days in Delta State to move to Bayelsa and other places to put our measuring equipment. But however, like I said, whatever happens in Lokoja gives you an idea. Like also we have one at Onisha by the bridge. What they call it, is it a naval base, something like that, or marine police. Now under the umbrella body we call Niger Basin Authority, there are 9 countries brought together by Rivers Niger and Benue system. We collaborate very well so that if anything is happening in Niger Republic, because they know that if from Niger will enter Nigeria from Kebbi State. So once we have a red alert in Niamey, we already know what is going to happen in Nigeria. So that collaboration. So whatever we get any information about Lokoja, we know what is going to happen downstream, Delta, Edo, Rivers, Anambra, and then Bayelsa finally.
Okay, which states, as we wind down, because I know you have another engagement you've got to go to quickly, which states have we experienced the worst of this flooding? I know Kogi, Bayelsa, Anambra too.
Jigawa.
Okay.
Over 96 people died in Jigawa State. And several farmlands washed away. The same thing happened in Anambra. Go to Obaro, go to Ayamelo or something like that. So many places have been submerged. Even two-story building, the total ground floor is overtaken. So people are just staying over. I don't have the money to get what to eat. So all the states that are contiguous to rivers, Niger and Benue,
affected.
Lokoja, that's Kogi State, Edo, Delta, Anambra, Rivers and Bayelsa, and then Adamawa State. But then inland, because of local rainfall within, in Jigawa, even Yobe, Bruno. So virtually no place is spared of this.
And just as I let you go, of course, this flooding, the impact is so much, not just even for those in Abuja. For us in Abuja, yes, we've been experiencing fuel scarcity, fuel queues as a result of that, because of the transport value chain has also been affected. I wonder what inflation rates will be in October, because the last one that came out, 20.77% from the NBS. When they release October, I guess that the flooding would also be a major component because of the supply of food, transportation, and what have you. But I will say thank you for coming on the program today. I have to leave you now so that you go attend to something else in your office.
Yes,
thank you very much. I hope to have you again soon, and I hope in the next 10 years, by God's grace, we will not be talking this again.
Yes, we will not be.
All right, that's the much you can take with the Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NISA. That's how it's been called, Clement Eze. We've been talking about the flood, and you've Clement Eze, and you've been hearing it from him as per the expectations for this flooding that has ravaged many parts of the country. All right, as we move forward with the program, you will recall that the MPC did have its September meeting. That's where it raised interest rates actually to 15.5%. We're expecting the next meeting next month, which will be the last for the year. Hopefully, we're still seeing that inflation is rising, 20.77%, according to the MBS. Just was it yesterday or 2 days ago? It was released by the Statistics Agency. The MPC raised interest rates to check the hike in inflation to 15.5%. After the September meeting, just about 3 weeks ago or so, the MPC Technical Committee did brief the press on some pertinent questions that were asked them. Just take a listen to some of those answers as it relates to why the interest rates was hiked and some other issues even around banking supervision. Take a listen to that, and I would say bye-bye for today. I will see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Moneyline with Nancy. I am Nancy Naji.
The figures, CBN's directors hosted questions from journalists and gave reasons as to the Monetary Policy Committee's decision to increase monetary policy rates by 150 basis points from 14% to 15.5%. In his opening statement, Dr. Hassan Mahmood, director of the Monetary Policy Department, CBN, emphasized that the MPC got to a point where stringent measures had to be taken to control inflation, as the quantity of money in the system was too much for the economy to absorb. He said that the committee took cognizance of global as well as local economic issues in arriving at its policy decisions. The director also said the stimuluses that governments across the world provided for their citizens during the COVID-19 increased the ability of people to spend, thereby creating challenges with global supply.
A lot of you are already familiar with the issues that have been cropping up at MPC, given the various communiques that have been issued. In yesterday's MPC, which is the 287th MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee dwelt on a lot of developments, both within the domestic economy and the global scene. Largely, development in the global scene is still besieged with a lot of uncertainties. You have also read, about what's going on in terms of the key indicators of those advanced and other emerging and developing economies in terms of their output growth post-COVID, in terms of the trends in inflation, and we'll get into the details of that as we go into this. And in terms of the pent-up demand, what we mean by the pent-up demand is because of the injections that we put in during COVID, a lot of household, farms, and businesses were injected with a lot of stimulus. The United States did over $2 trillion. Nigeria also did over 5 trillion naira. We had various injections in most United Kingdom, Euro area. So those, increased what we call the aggregate demand. That is the ability of people to, spend. And because the supply side, that's those that are producing the goods and services, could not meet up with that volume, because that volume of injection was far more than the regular intake for those economies. Because of that, we had a build-up in that demand bucket, while the supply side was not being able to meet up. Even though the productions were made, the infrastructure for delivery, the logistics were also, overloaded. So you don't see those deliveries arriving in homes and houses. And what that means was that then you had a huge pressure on the prices of those goods. So the prices went up. Then we had the shock that happened in the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget that Russia, or that region, accounts for 50% of commodities that are particularly the cereals, account for more than 38% of the global oil supply and gas, particularly to the Euro area. And so that restrictions and the embargoes that were putting on those places on themselves that were stopping to give other countries also brought in some shortages. And this shortage also means that energy prices will go up. So from the pent-up demand, from the supply side too, you see restrictions coming there. And don't forget that we also had the COVID restrictions. China locked down again, and that is still on. China is the largest importer of things around the world, followed by the United States. So that also reduced demand for a lot of things in other countries. I'm giving this background for you to know the problems from the external side. From the domestic side, we also had our own issues around domestic macroeconomic developments, including the inflation numbers, and I'll also come to why the inflation trend is different now and why the decision that the committee took is a lot, more aggressive. So we had issues around the rate at which the GDP was going. Quarter on quarter, it actually declined, but averagely we are still doing 3.5. We had issues around the rising food prices, which is also related to security challenges, which are some other structural issues that we have, and other logistics. And then Director of Development Finance will speak to a lot of that. And then we also have issues around, the ability of credits to penetrate the rest of the economy and interventions and other things that we do. Around the credit expansion, we had issues from the fiscal side. Government was not getting revenue, so some of the overheads and some of the infrastructural requirements to meet the supply requirement of the economy are also not meant. We also have issues of pent-up demand too, because we also have, injections that were done within the economy. So you also know that since beginning of 2021, inflation numbers have been going up, but 10 basis point, 15 basis point, highest to get less than 20 basis point. That like 0.2, 0.2 or 1.5, like that. But from May 2022, inflation numbers started increasing by 100 basis point, 110 basis point, 90 basis point. That's what sometimes we call galloping or runaway inflation. So the movement was too big, and monetary policy tools are largely to just manage demand, and the money market end around our MPC is just to change the behavior of the rates in the money market, the rate at which banks transact within themselves, and that rate will feed into the lending, deposit, and other rates, and other fixed income market rates, and the rates within the economy. So our tools are only effective in that space, and that's why we said monetary policy rates are for signaling. When we make a behavior there, we want it to feed into other rates that relate with the rest of the economy. So we had the inflation numbers jumping in that proportion. We had the growth numbers still not moving, from 3.11 to 3.5. Quarter on quarter actually declined to 3.34. So you see those, slow growth recovery. And then the shocks, these external shocks that I mentioned, now came in. So it was clear to the monetary authorities that for as long as we don't tame this inflation, and very quickly, then all the gains that we've had prior to this period, including the injections and all this, will be wiped out by this denominator inflation. And that means disposable income of households, of businesses. If you are earning a salary of 10,000 naira in 2020, with inflation of maybe 15%, and now we are doing 20%, that's a proportion of that same salaries, because it's not going to change anyway. We'll now be buying you less things. Maybe if you are buying fish and meat before, now you drop to only meat, which is not as healthy as fish, and like that. So you see people falling into the poverty line. I'm making this analog so that people understand that the reason for addressing inflation is not necessarily to please investors, or because we keep talking about negative real interest rate and all that stuff, but also to look at the most vulnerable groups of the society, those that are within this poverty bucket, because those are that constitute the largest population of the economy. So it's also important that we're looking at the lower end of the market, of the economy, and also looking at the investors and the businesses and the tertiary end of the market. So because of this development, we also have issues around the external sectors in terms of the volume of import and export. Director of Trade and Exchange is here in terms of the capital outflows we witness, in terms of the measures that have been taken to encourage inflows. And so this interest rate behavior also affect that sector, and I think they will talk about that. But so given this plethora of issues that I've mentioned, the Monetary Policy Committee decided at this meeting that they need to aggressively drive inflation down, because of the advantages that I've mentioned, what inflation is the harm it is doing to the rest of the economy, and the need to keep people in their jobs and live a good livelihood.
Speaking on the depreciation of the naira, the Director of Trade and Exchange Department, Mrs. Ozoimena Naji, said that the Apex Bank was taking steps to firm up the currency. Naji said that the demand for foreign exchange outstripped supply currency, adding that the CBN was doing a lot to mop up supply.
You will agree with me that the main drivers of those is the difference in demand and supply. And demand outstrips supply of forex. But also know that even in that parallel market, the demand in that market, or the share of that market in proportion to the whole demand of the economy of foreign exchange, is very small. But that's the market that is loudly quoted or often quoted. Be that as may, the central bank is doing a lot to ramp up supply. One of them is our drive on remittances and naira for dollar, and we have seen a huge increase in the level of remittances that have come in after we implemented the naira for dollar. Also, the RT200 is also one aspect that is bringing in, repatriation has gone up. The governor mentioned it yesterday at the briefing that the first quarter was about 20 million, second quarter was about 600, and in this third quarter we're looking at over 1 billion of repatriated inflows. So we're ramping up our policy on increasing supply. We're also looking at other avenues of attracting investment from the diaspora into the Nigerian economy. Those are some of the things we're doing. As long as we keep increasing supply, we will continue to start seeing a narrowing of the gap. You also know that we have election coming up, and some of this election will require some kind of exchanges and things, but we are ramping up our supply, and that's what the central bank is doing, so that supply can go up, and the differential in rate will continue to narrow.
Commenting on the various economic intervention initiatives by the Apex Bank and the prospect of recouping the funds, Dr. Yusuf Yila, Director of Development Finance Department, said about 9 trillion naira had been invested in the various development finance interventions. He, however, said that all the monies would be recovered. According to Yila, 9.3 trillion naira had been invested in various development finance interventions, out of which 3.7 trillion naira had been repaid.
One is we're slowing down on intervention. Like I said, it's not as if we're not going to do. We're slowing down. Second one is, I said, 9.3 trillion out, 3.75 repaid, 5 trillion is not due. You understand? So that you don't, we've given out 9.3, only 3.7 has been repaid. Manufacturing long term, between 5 and 10 years, 5 trillion of it is not due. As is due, they will come back. Then your question about revolving is about the SME, MSMEs, which are very there. Somebody talked about 40 million of them. So they ask me, if you take, you repay, it comes back to the port. Another person can take. But if you take, you don't pay back, well, how would other people benefit from it?
In terms of the impact on bank loans and incomes, the Director of Banking Supervision Department, CBN, Mr. Haruna Mustafa, stated that the rate hike would be a bittersweet experience. He also expressed that by the rate hike, banks will reprice their loans and would expect to see interest rates on bank loans go up.
In terms of the impact on bank loans and incomes, clearly it will have an impact, but it's going to be a bittersweet experience. This is what is going to happen. One, by the rate hike,